Okay. All right. Welcome, folks. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join us here, and then we'll get rolling. Um, Glad you're here. Hope you're not too hot out there. Welcome, folks. We'll get started here in a minute. All right. I think I will get us rolling here. We like to get you out on good time, so we'll get started on time. I'm Dave Sly, Wild Virginia's Water Quality Program Director, and I'm here to welcome you, and I'll introduce our guest speaker in a little bit, but I have the slide up so you know if you're in the right place. But we're excited about the program tonight, and I wanted to just give you a little bit of the logistics here. We are recording this program, and it will be available later. We'll get you a link in a follow-up email, and please feel free to share it widely. We get pretty good viewership after the program, so that's a real benefit. If you want here early on, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, let us know who you are, where you're coming from. That's kind of nice for us all to see who we're with. During the program, please feel free to put questions in the Q&A box, and we'll try to address as many of those as we can towards the end. And as I say, you will get a follow-up email, which will have links and whatever additional information we think will be useful to you. Just a little Wild Virginia ad here for you. In case you're new to us, I know a lot of you aren't. Our two main programs include habitat connectivity, where we try to make it safe for wildlife and people to move across the land to connect the great natural areas we have where they've been divided up by our work. And by the way, we're hiring right now a new connectivity director. The other program deals with water quality, which has encompassed fights against bad pipelines, uh, dealing with dangerous chemicals like PFAS, and a range of other things. Finally, we have a Clean Water Advocates program, which is a 9-week course where we teach people the 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 laws and the regulations and the practical ways that they can be advocates in their own communities. And then we have lots of programs like this. In general, at least a couple of programs every month on a wide range of topics. And then finally, we are right now ending as of midnight tonight our summer fundraising appeal. So it's always a good time to encourage you to check into what we're doing. You can scan the QR code, go to wildvirginia.org to join us. Make sure we have you keep contact with us, and please donate. You make it possible for us to do what we do every day, and I can tell you we appreciate it greatly. So, without further ado from me, I'm just going to turn the program over to Dan Schaefer and let him take it away.
All right, thanks, Dave. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Schaefer. I am the Executive Director of Allegheny-Blue Ridge Alliance, and I'm going to speak tonight about our Conservation Hub program and some of the work we've been doing over the last few years. Some of that has been in concert with Wild Virginia, and I want to take a second and say thank you to Dave and Kylie, Wild Virginia in general, for having us on tonight. It is much appreciated. I tend to ramble if I don't have a script, so I'm pretty much going to be reading one. I'm going to turn my video off in the meantime because who wants to see that? But I'll come back for Q&A at the end. All right, as mentioned, I'm with the Allegheny-Blue Ridge Alliance.
Dan, I'm not seeing your slides. Are they supposed to be
You're
up?
not. Oh, that's because I actually forgot to hit share. I'm sorry about that. How's that? All right, so as mentioned, with the Allegheny-Blue Ridge Alliance, we are a conservation-focused organization based in Monterey in Highland County, Virginia. I live in Stanton, Virginia. And here we go. The Alliance was founded in 2014 to protect and promote ecological integrity in the Allegheny-Blue Ridge region of Virginia and West Virginia. That was in response to the announcement of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which a lot of people around here were not very happy about. For the first 5 years, we're focused almost entirely on opposition to the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. If you don't know, that was a high-capacity gas line proposed that would have bisected the remaining wild landscape of the Appalachians. Upon the ACP's cancellation in July of 2020, we applied the mapping and analytical tools we developed fighting that project to what became the Conservation Hub program. We realized there were a lot of environmental problems and issues out there, and most people didn't know how to address them. And we had sort of learned how and how to help. So our mission, as it is now, we empower communities through mapping, education, and information transparency to protect and preserve the resources, heritage, and economy of the Allegheny-Blue Ridge region and anywhere else for anyone who wants to learn how to do this stuff. We've got 3 main programs at this point. The Conservation Hub, which is kind of the title of the presentation. Through that, we provide communities the tools and skills they need to effect in the processes of infrastructure development, land management, cultural preservation, basically protecting their communities from bad projects and helping advocate for good ones. Key to that is our information transparency program. A lot of infrastructure projects, any kind of development generates tons of information that regulators get and know how to use, and developers create and know how to hide. Part of our focus is making sure the public actually gets access to the documents that will help them have a voice. Third, we provide some GIS services to regional conservation-focused organizations, whether that's cartographic products, big wall-sized maps, or environmental analyses, or in some cases, we host some online maps for people when they find it helpful. In 2024, we really launched the Information Transparency Program after getting a lot of stonewalling from the Forest Service and some state agencies. And we sort of got tired of that and decided that we were going to use FOIAs to see what we could actually get. This program, led by Andrew Young, who's our staff attorney and regulatory coordinator, has greatly furthered our goal of making public information public. This is really critical to the overall program at this point, and I sort of don't know how we got along without it before. For those of you who don't know, the Freedom of Information Act provides the public the right to request access to records from any federal agency. FOIA doesn't cover state or local governments, but most states have their own similar public records laws, and that enables access to documents from state and local agencies. FOIAs have provided ABRA and its partners with the means to affect agency decisions, identify bad actors and lax regulators, and penalize those who are operating illegally. And we'll hear a little bit more about that last one later. So the Conservation Hub focuses a lot on the use of online mapping and tying that information that we find from regulators and project developers to the regulatory process, whether those are permit documents or water quality regulations, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of that information is out there, but it's hard to navigate and find. And most people, once they find it, they really don't know what to do with it or how to engage with regulators and local officials or federal officials. And that's really what the hub is all about. We get information to you, we provide some basic analysis and maybe reformatting, put it in an easily accessible format, which for most people in this kind of data is a map, and tie all that back to the information generated by a project or a land management action, with instructions in a lot of cases on how to do something about it. So ideally, once someone is engaged with the hub and the map, they'll understand regulatory requirements faced by the project, what the permitting process is going to be, local, state, and federal agencies and how to get in touch with them, and how to object, challenge, or otherwise interact with the project. So the Conservation Hub and the interactive maps are all available to the public on our website. Each hub aims to be easily accessible and allow individuals to quickly familiarize themselves with complex projects. So next we'll talk about a few of these. We've got about 19 altogether. Not all of them have information pages associated with them. Some of them are simple snapshot maps we've made of projects that may never come to fruition. But we're going to talk about a couple of the bigger ones now. Talk about Corridor H, which is a major highway project in West Virginia we've been working on for years. Land application of biosolids in Virginia and what that might mean for our food and water. Shenandoah Valley Black Heritage Project, National Forest Integrity Project, James River Headwaters Program, and coal mining impacts to endangered species critical habitat in West Virginia. Several of those are a mouthful, and it's a lot of work to get them that way. First, Corridor H. That was proposed as part of the Appalachian Development Highway System in 1965. It's still not finished. It might not be. That system was meant to open rural regions of Appalachia to economic development, probably extractive industries, by upgrading the roads throughout the region. ABRA sort of adopted this issue when we first started the hub as a test case of the program, and 5 years later, we're still involved with it. The local communities raised concerns over the routes that were selected, water resource impacts, non-compliance with construction requirements. We have a couple of maps on this and have been focusing on the project planning, environmental surveys, monitoring waterways, and compliance data. Now, Andrew has led a lot of this work that is not map-based. He's participated in meetings with partner groups and the Monongahela National Forest, Federal Highway Administration, West Virginia Division of Highways. In these meetings, our mapping of the highway projects are used as key pieces of the discussion, and they really highlight environmental impacts to the sensitive regions of the West Virginia Highlands. Our participation and the inclusion of the maps in these discussions have definitely led to greater environmental review, some holdups to the projects, and we hope better oversight of the projects by these agencies. Here's a snapshot of one of the maps, the Parsons to Davis section. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of that right now. It's easier just to play with the maps than me show you static images or try to demonstrate them on screen. There are two areas that we're concerned with at this point that are not yet under construction. Parsons to Davis and Wardensville to the Virginia state line. In the Parsons to Davis region, ABRA supported the Go North movement, who wants to explore a northern route that goes around the city of Thomas, to the town of Thomas to the north, instead of crossing Blackwater Canyon and impacting the historical resources there. See, we use a lot of FOIA requests to get critical project documentation and communications between agencies. ABRA has prepared comments for the Federal Highway Administration's NEPA processes, challenged boring permits for the George Washington National Forest and the Monongahela, and pushed for consideration of off-forest alternative routes, which are supposed to be required, but have not really been looked at. In Wardensville, after overwhelming public support, the section of Corridor H that ends at the Virginia state line is now on hold for at least 6 months, while the George Washington National Forest goes through a NEPA process to get a new special use permit. They weren't going to, but ABRA submitted comments, and so did lots of other people, and coordinated a letter to the George Washington National Forest advocating for this, and enough people kind of showed up, if you will, that they decided to go back and do things the right way. Virginia Wilderness Committee was another major partner of ours on that, as was West Virginia Highlands Conservancy and Friends of Blackwater. So as this goes on, we're going to continue to support partner organizations, monitoring the project and providing research, mapping, FOIA requests, and outreach as we await publication of final environmental reviews and probably get ready to object to them. Dave mentioned biosolids and PFAS, and this is something we've been looking at for a couple of years now. What are biosolids? They're the solid organic matter recovered from sewage treatment and some food industry processes. Sewage-based biosolids are produced when domestic sewage is treated at wastewater treatment plants to separate liquids from solids. This results in kind of a goopy product known as sludge. The term biosolid specifically refers to treated sewage sludge that meets regulatory standards for land application and is considered safe for use as a soil fertilizer. But biosolids are generally treated only for pathogens and sometimes tested for heavy metals. Other things like pharmaceuticals, PFAS, and other toxic chemicals remain in the material when it's spread on farms across the country. As you can see on this slide, I kind of put together a general cycle of how this works. Homes and businesses create municipal wastewater, which goes to a wastewater treatment plant. What a lot of people don't know is that landfill leachate, the goopy toxic mess that pools at the bottom of a landfill, is drained off and often also treated at those same wastewater treatment plants that are really only designed for human waste. Industrial food production has leftovers and waste products that are considered non-hazardous. All of those get mixed up and put into big storage facilities, after which you can't tell where any particular piece of the problem came from. And then they are eventually trucked to your field or neighboring fields and spread on the land we grow food in, or some of it gets washed into rivers and ends up in the groundwater. Some of these chemicals are very persistent, and very little testing is actually done in this program. In fact, there are some sections of this where we don't know if testing is being done or not. We've worked with several partners across the state, including Wild Virginia, to better understand the threat of PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, in biosolids and other places in the environment. Wild Virginia obtained some data via FOIA, showing that DEQ had requested and then sat on data related to PFAS testing at wastewater treatment plants across the state. And they didn't make it public until their hand was kind of forced. We also know that DEQ is in no hurry to require or even advocate for the testing of biosolids for PFAS. Maryland, just next door, does require such testing, and it prohibits the spreading of biosolids containing PFAS above a certain threshold. A lot of biosolids spread in Virginia come from Maryland, but we don't know what's in it because the state won't test it. Many environmental and public health-oriented groups are focused on this issue, raising awareness of the threat and pushing back against this practice of spreading toxic chemicals on our farmland. We aim to continue supporting them as we're able. For now, we have 2 online maps available from our website. One shows details about biosolids spreading in Augusta County and Rockbridge counties in Virginia. The other looks with less detail at the entire state. DEQ's generally been good about getting data to us in a timely manner, but we've been requesting data from the latter half of 2024 for about 6 months now, and we still don't have it. They say they're rebuilding the database, and they've done that a couple times, so that's probably what's happening. In 2023, ABRA began working with new partners on projects related to cultural preservation and environmental justice. The Shenandoah Valley Black Heritage Project sponsored researchers to locate and document significant African American historical and cultural sites in the greater Shenandoah Valley region. Work was completed for 8 counties, and the Black Heritage Project hopes to expand their effort to their entire 14-county area of interest. In 2024, ABRA built upon its previous work, geolocating these features in an online map, and created a story map to provide a virtual tour of the region, including narrative, photos, oral histories, and more. Environmental justice, in all its forms, is and will continue to be a major issue confronting our society. Though through a lack of capacity slowed our work in this area over the last year, we remain dedicated to supporting disadvantaged communities across the region. Everybody deserves protection, their basic rights, and a say in how development affects their community. Conservation Hub's National Forest Integrity Project, or NFIP, is a branch of the Conservation Hub program. It focuses on the management of our national forests. Originally, it focused on West Virginia's Monongahela National Forest and concerns about Forest Service timber projects and their impacts to the endangered candy darter. The project quickly expanded to cover all projects with a significant timbering component and related environmental impacts. ABRA has begun the expansion of the NFIP to cover the George Washington and Jefferson National Forests in Virginia, and our previous focus on the impacts of timbering on water quality, sensitive species, and climate resilience remains. In addition, we and a partner are investigating the impacts of prescribed burning on a species of special concern, the cow-knob salamander. This delicate amphibian's range is limited to north-facing slopes on Shenandoah and Great North Mountains in Virginia and West Virginia. That's it. It only lives at elevations above 3,000 feet in mature hardwood forests. A special agreement to protect the salamander was instituted as part of the most recent George Washington National Forest Plan, but concerns have arisen that the Forest Service's implementation of prescribed burns will destroy and fragment portions of the salamander's habitat. And this investigation is ongoing. Related information has been requested via FOIA, and the study's been combined with a new project. As many of you know, recent legislation and executive orders that aim to remove forest protections and dramatically increase timber production while limiting public input are out there and being passed and being implemented in some respects. And that's greatly concerning. Excuse me. The vast majority of the George Washington National Forest is considered a high priority for logging and burning under the guise of wildfire risk reduction. In general, eastern hardwood forests are not high-risk areas for wildfire, and one would be reasonable expecting that the clear-cutting of large areas and removing of the mature trees would tend to dry the forest out and make wildfire more likely. But it seems no one's done the studies to prove this in the East. To change this, ABRA is partnering with Virginia Wilderness Committee on a project that aims to collect that data and provide the analysis to show that the Forest Service's plans, many of which are imposed from DC, are ineffective at best and likely quite harmful. We hope to kick that project off in the coming months, although it's going to depend on the resources we can gather to do that work. The James River Headwaters Environmental Stewardship and Resiliency Project, or JRH, if you want to save a lot of time, grew out of a long-standing desire from our partner, Cowpasture River Preservation Association, to reconstitute and expand their long-running water monitoring program in the Cowpasture River watershed. They wanted to expand it to the Jackson River watershed and thus cover basically the entire headwaters region of the James River. The James, as many of you know, begins at the confluence of the Cowpasture and Jackson rivers at Iron Gate in Allegheny County, Virginia. Our team decided to take a shot at the resources we need to do that, and we were awarded a 2-year APA Thriving Communities grant to support the project. 4 days later, the program was terminated after we received notice, but it has been reinstated, at least temporarily. So we plan to complete the project and get as much money in the door and to our partners as possible. But knowing that it might not last, we've also undertaken some fundraising efforts to support that work in case the grant disappears again. The JRH project combines monthly monitoring of several physical water parameters, temperature, turbidity, and conductivity, as well as E. coli, at 23 stations in the Cowpasture River watershed. That's phase 1. We plan to establish at least 6 stations in the Jackson River watershed just to get started. And then twice a year, we do a synoptic or snapshot survey of the monthly sites plus several dozen tributaries, at least in the Cowpasture River watershed. Those are the ones shown in orange on the map. The blue ones are the regular monthly testing sites. Data will be hosted in an online map that will also serve as a regional planning tool for citizens, students, and local officials. That map is actually already live, and water monitoring data through early July is live as well. Speaking of students, that program has an educational component in public schools of Allegheny, Bath, and Highland counties. And that curriculum is going to be split between some classroom instruction and in-stream benthic monitoring. The goal for that curriculum is that it will be SOL and MIWI aligned so that it can be used in other parts of the state with reasonably similar aquatic ecologies. MIWI stands for Meaningful Watershed and Educational Experience, and it's a learner-centered framework that focuses on hands-on investigations into local environmental issues and hopefully culminates in informed action. An initial run of this program was recently undertaken at Camp Mont Shenandoah, which is a summer camp for girls in Bath County. They've also graciously agreed to host one of our monthly monitoring sites. Finally, the JRH program seeks to provide local officials and landowners tools to protect water quality, such as providing information on agricultural best management practices, or BMPs, and assistance programs that help defray the costs of implementing them. Local officials will benefit from having a robust online environmental analysis tool for land use and other planning. Citizens will benefit from the online tools and workshops and being able to better engage in the process. And hopefully the region as a whole will benefit from students who have greater understanding of the local environment, why protecting it matters, and how to do it. We're hoping to help educate the next generation of water protectors. Final project we'll look at is coal mining and timbering impacts to endangered species critical habitat. This project focuses on species preservation, water quality impacts, and land degradation, and hopes to hold coal operators especially accountable and push regulators to enforce the law. They often don't. In West Virginia, unregulated mining and timbering activities threaten the habitats of 2 endangered Appalachian species. Despite the misconception that coal mining is a thing of the past, there's been a significant increase in large destructive surface mines and timber operations over the last decade. The easy coal's gone, so they have to do mountaintop removal, and they tend to push those into valleys, which then leach toxic things into the rivers. Most of the eastern forest is regrown, and just like in the George Washington National Forest, the majority of the Monongahela is targeted as high priority for logging and burning. The Wyandot River crayfish, once abundant across its historic range, is now near extinction, survives in only 2 streams, Clear Fork and Pinnacle Creek. Similarly, the candy darter, known as the underwater rainbow, has seen its range reduced by over 75%. In this project, really the information transparency program has shined. ABRA's work on this project, again, led by Andrew Young, who tirelessly submits FOIA requests and reviews mountains of permit and regulatory documents, and I do mean thousands of pages a month. Started as a simple question when we were looking at what was happening in some candy darter critical habitat at the southern end of the Mon. How's this coal company able to use this Forest Service road? Well, we looked into it, we found improper permits, illegal road use, water quality violations that make your eyes water, up to 9 times the legal limit in some cases, and basically no enforcement of this company and several of the other mines operating nearby. We're working with partners to force compliance with the law to protect species, the water, and the forests, but it's kind of an uphill battle in this political environment. That coal company we found is called South Fork Coal Company. It has a long history of environmental violations with very little enforcement. That company has 4 other mines in the immediate vicinity, all of them drained to Candy Darter critical habitat. They plan to operate the Rocky Run surface mine, which is the one kind of highlighted in blue in the upper right, into the 2030s. It's not just South Fork Coal. A number of other mines have water quality issues where their effluent is consistently above limits. Many of the mines in this area, and nearly all of them in critical habitat, lack protection and enhancement plans that are supposed to protect endangered species. And even if they're issued, violations can take over a year to be resolved, and then they're immediately committed again. The mines never really stop operating, except in the case of 2. South Fork Coal is currently not operating, and another operation, the Pocahontas surface mine, I believe, number 5, was shut down for creating an unregulated, unpermitted valley fill, like pushing part of the mountain into a stream. There's a lot to do in this region, as you can see by where all the mining activity is in West Virginia and the critical habitat in blue and red. We're hoping to expand this study to cover the entire range of both of these species, map and publicize all the violations and all the polluters, analyze water quality data, and figure out who is polluting and what they're putting into the water, and push for enforcement and habitat protection. And we're actively seeking lots of funds to do that, because that is a multi-year program that's going to take a lot of work. Well, we sort of touched on a few of the things we do. Those are kind of some of the bigger projects we've been working on over the last year or so. We do lots of other things as well. We've had looks at wind energy, gold mining in Buckingham County, many different types of projects. Anywhere you can put things on a map and people are upset about it, we can probably come in and make participation a little bit easier. And that's really our goal. We try to shed light on the environmental challenges that communities face when they're faced with land development projects, infrastructure, all of that sort of thing. We'd like to give them the tools and educate them on how to use the information that we can provide so that they can protect their voice, their communities, and their resources. Thanks for joining us tonight. If any of you have questions, please feel free to reach out anytime or ask them now. Thanks so much again to Dave and Kylie in Wild, Virginia. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share.
Okay, thanks, Dan. That's great. Somebody did ask how to contact you, and of course, I put your email in the chat. But again, everybody know that you'll get a follow-up email, and it will, of course, have Dan's information, a link to this program, and I'm sure some other things that you'll find useful. And while people seem to be being kind of shy right now as far as questions, I have plenty, so that's not a problem. But
Hit me, Dave.
you guys definitely join in. One of the things that you described a number of interesting projects, but maybe you can go into a little more about how ABRA decides what it's going to take on, because obviously there's 1,000 issues you could work on. So maybe a little bit description of that.
Well, that has kind of morphed over the years, and sometimes it just ends up being staff initiative. For instance, the National Forest Integrity Project was really Rick Webb's idea. There was concern about the Candy Darter, and we started looking at wow, was it the Greenbrier Southeast project in Pocahontas County first? And then found out about several more projects and he wanted to pursue it. The board thought it was a good idea. Anything that we think is going to take a significant amount of resources, we absolutely run by the board and make sure everyone thinks it's a good plan. But some of these things tend to have a life of their own. As I mentioned, the National Forest Integrity Project turned into this mining impacts to endangered species effort, which we realized we really needed to figure out how to get more information. And now there's an entire other branch of what we do. In a lot of cases, partner groups or regional conservation organizations will approach us and ask if we can produce a map for them. And that often ends up with us having to find some regulatory documents and guiding them through some processes, or just keeping up with news articles so that they can link to a site that includes the mapping, includes relevant articles and regulatory stuff, and they don't have to try and host it all on their own site.
Mhm.
Sometimes we just decide this is something I want to look at.
Right. Well, that's what you just said about another organization contacting you, and you mentioned the cow pasture river folks. Again, maybe you could say a little bit more about how the roles of ABRA versus these other groups, how they work together.
Sure, and thank you for that. As I mentioned, we're often approached by groups who want to do some kind of a project with mapping. Let's take Cowpasture River Preservation Association. They've been doing a water monitoring program in their watershed for 25 years or something like that, and had been, maintaining that data and sending it to Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, who often included it in their water monitoring maps. But they wanted to expand that, and having worked with us over several years, first with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline work, and then with us doing some visualizations of their water monitoring data, they decided they wanted to work with us on that project. So it happened to be timely, as there was at the time federal money floating about that we thought we could try for, and we were lucky enough to get, at least for the time being. And we're going to engage with also the Jackson River Preservation Association, James River Association, so that we can make sure that all the data we're collecting and hosting can import directly into their system, and anyone else working on the Chesapeake Bay, and also Rockledge Area Conservation Council. Because if we have the funds and the staff availability, the next place we're going to expand will be the Maury River Basin, which also feeds the James and gives us access to the Shenandoah Valley. So long term, hopefully we can start in the Shenandoah River.
Great. Okay, here's one I'm not sure if any of us can answer, but I'll give you the shot. What is the chance of keeping the roadless areas secure?
That's a good one. I can
I
pretty much
want an answer.
yeah, there's a guarantee there are going to be lots of lawsuits on that one.
Yeah.
And one, I really still can't fathom why no one pushed to make that a law. I know it's been introduced several times, but no emphasis seemed to have been placed on that whenever there's been a majority that might want to pass it in Congress. The Roadless Area Conservation Act has been introduced several times. It was recently reintroduced in June. I think it's going to be harder to repeal the rule and effectively repeal the rule than they think. And, that was probably the most successful instance of public participation in federal rulemaking in decades, if not ever. I think 1.5 million people responded to that, and 97% of them were for it. So it's a pretty popular rule. Those places are basically wilderness quality lands, and I don't think people want Starbucks in them, and I don't think they want them to be clear cut. So I think if it goes away and the timber companies try to move in at speed, they're probably going to face some pretty stiff resistance. So I don't think that's going to get really abolished over the next 2 years in any effective way. And I think there's still some people who are left at the Forest Service who don't want it to be.
Yeah. Well, and I'll throw my 2 cents in here, and that is that for all of you who are hearing executive order after executive order, proposal after proposal, those aren't automatically law. They're not automatically going to rule the day. As Dan said, a lot of these things are going to be fought over in court for a long time. So just because you hear something that was thrown out in an order doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. And ABRA and lots of other folks are paying very close attention to all the different parts of this picture. Um, I will say, here's not a question, but a statement which I heartily agree with, which is ABRA is doing incredible and professional work protecting our environment. We must ask ourselves, how would this work get done without Dan, Andrew, and ABRA? So that's just a little celebration there that I heartily agree with. Now, here's a question. Our neighbor routinely puts biosolids on his land. Do you want to know about this? Also, do you have any recourse to prevent this from happening?
Sure. I mean, we want to know about it. I expect that unless this was the first time, that information is already in the database that DEQ provides and hosts publicly. Um, you can you can keep it farther away from your land. I don't know that you can absolutely keep it off of theirs. There's supposed to be a notification process where adjacent landowners are notified that this is going to happen. And I think you have the opportunity to object or at least require additional setbacks. But I'm not sure you can straight up stop it.
Well, let me jump in again.
Please. You're the lawyer here with more
I,
experience on this than I.
I take the host prerogative. The only way you can necessarily stop it is to get it withdrawn in general. And the way you can do that is to bring attention to it. And the kind of work that ABRA does is a big part of that. The other thing is to put pressure on during the regulatory processes, during the permitting process. Um, I'm not going to say that it is easy to defeat one of these things when people are applying for it. DEQ is in the habit of giving permits to people who want them. Um, but it can have an effect. There was a major expansion or a proposal for expanded number of fields for which the company a while back kind of pulled back its application. Again, that may or may not be a permanent, stop on that expansion. But that's again one of the things that ABRA, that while Virginia and others work on those regulatory processes, and we all need help with that. Which brings up another question: what are ways volunteers can support your work for ABRA?
I guess that depends on, aside from helping with outreach, perhaps, I suppose that depends on skills with research, or if anyone knows GIS and has some time available. I'm behind on my work because I'm now executive director too. Um, Certainly if folks have experience dealing with technical documents and or environmental stuff, we could probably use some help on FOIA reviews. Because when 5,000 page documents come down, it takes a lot of work to get through and get any useful information out of that. So I think that's probably someplace we could use some help.
So again, I have put your email in the chat because somebody came in late and didn't have it. And again, you're going to get follow-up since everybody who registered is going to get the follow-up email. And so you'll have chances to contact there. Next question is, what is your source of financial support?
Historically, it was predominantly private foundation money. In the last 2 years, we've had some kind of federal pass-through grants from regional organizations such as Chesapeake Bay Trust. Um, and of course the EPA Thriving Communities grant that I mentioned. So, and also individual donors have long been a source of some funding, and this past year has been absolutely incredible with the amount of support that we've received, and we're very grateful for that.
Mhm.
Donations can be made on our website.
Yes. Hey, we always have to remind folks of that. That's what keeps us going. Um, One of the things I remember, Dan, full disclosure to everybody, I've been involved with ABRA forever, in the Conservation Hub. And one of the things I remember early on was that agency folks who were trying to get a handle on some of the things going on were saying, hey, we went and looked at your stuff. Do you hear that kind of thing from folks? And probably not in an official capacity, but what's your experience with folks out there who are, with agencies who are appreciating the fact that all this stuff is getting compiled and put in one place?
I hear some positive things through the grapevine, and nothing really directly. But I've been head down for the past year, just trying to keep up with maintaining what we've got and administrative duties, and
Right.
trying to do a little bit of new work here and there. So honestly, someone probably could have said it right to me on a night I didn't sleep, and I wouldn't remember it.
Understood.
Actually, if I can go back and address that question about financial support.
Yeah.
Um, there have been a number of private foundations that have been, or community foundations that have been like great sources of support over the years, including like Appalachian Stewardship Foundation. Um, let's see, Chesapeake Bay Trust has been really helpful. They're not really a private fund. West Virginia Highlands Conservancy has been a big supporter of ours over the years. Um, let's see, Ohio River Valley Participatory Fund, Little Swiss Fund. There are just a number of different groups out there that have really helped us out, and we're greatly appreciative.
Okay, here's one. If a person or a local organization has a project that they think they might be able to work with ABRA on, do you encourage them to approach you, and what would you want to hear from them to think about if you could work together?
Sure. First of all, absolutely reach out. My email's here in the chat, and it's also accessible on our website. I'd want to know as much as you can tell me about what the project is. Why are you concerned about it? And what are the threats to your community, to some environmental factor, to a species? Um, and kind of who's doing it? Is the threat imminent? Is it something we'd have to sort of figure out, is it actionable? I mean, you can put anything on a map, but is it going to make any difference?
Right.
We are not always the best source of action to make a difference, but we'll certainly, if we don't think we can do something about it and we know someone who can, we'll make sure you find out. And if I or my colleagues think it's an actionable idea, we'll take it to the board. We actually have a specific form to fill out for prospective projects that helps us evaluate them. And we would do a little research of our own, discuss it, vote on it, and if it were to move forward, we'd figure out how to find some resources for it.
Great.
And also, depending on the project, we would probably, ask the sponsor, if you will, if there are any resources they know about to support the project as well.
Yeah. Okay, here is our problem is corporate agriculture, Christmas tree growers in the steep mountains, and farmers can get away with murder here. There is no permitting process. How can we map the spread of plantations using GIS when most of the destroyed land is leased, so there is no requirement for a public record?
Hmm. Um, the first thing that comes to mind is that Google Earth updates their imagery pretty regularly. And there are other sources of aerial and satellite imagery as well. That's probably something we can throw together a map that would help with that fairly easily and hold on to it for a while so you can find these places. It's new plantations of Christmas trees or just, new clearing or agricultural activities on a mountainside ought to be pretty easy to spot. So as
Mhm.
long as your imagery is updated fairly regularly, yeah, you should be able to find anything that's happened in the last year or two. In the last month or two, there's not a whole lot we can do about that.
Yeah.
But reach out to us on that one.
Well, and again, I mean, the information can come from a variety of sources, just crowdsourcing, I guess you'd call it. But then putting it in a place where everybody can find it is what's really valuable about that.
Sure, sure. And that's a good point. If you have folks in your community that are also upset about this and you're seeing new areas being cleared, your smartphone is an incredible tool. Just take a picture of it and make sure your geolocation is on. We'll be able to figure out where that is pretty easily just by the dot on the map.
Mhm. Okay. Now, I was gonna say something about the fact that the name is Allegheny Blue Ridge, um, and what that means, but that kind of can tie into this other question here, which is, could Indiana use these resources? I mid-states corridor, new terrain highway, and/or hellbender salamander habitat in the Blue Ridge. So that's kind of a complicated.
I didn't understand all of that.
Well, I guess,
The
yeah.
first question, can folks in Indiana use these resources? There's not really anything we are doing that isn't publicly available. I'd say 95% of the data that we host on our maps is downloaded from the Forest Service or from the state's Environmental Quality or Environmental Protection Office or USGS or something like that. Individual projects like, say, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline or Corridor H, that information has to be kind of, it's either posted online or it has to be requested. And yeah, then you need to find someone who knows how to convert that into something you could put on a map. As far as the just document review and understanding and pursuing comments and objections to projects, yeah, anyone who wants to read the stuff and figure out that process, which we can help with, can do that. Doesn't matter what state you're in.
Well, one of the points is that these national forests are for everybody. They're not just for Virginians or West Virginians. And the other thing I guess I'd say about that is, frankly, what ABRA does, the Conservation Hub, it's kind of a template that hopefully other people in other places can at least use as somewhat of a guide. And I think that I know that there have been other folks looking at it in the past. Uh,
That's a good point. And if you don't mind me jumping in real quick on
Please.
that, our initial mapping system, the Compliance Surveillance Initiative for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, um, it was deliberately clunky, right? It's kind of a somewhat self-deprecating way to say it, but that was done on purpose. We didn't want to do anything that required any coding or any really specialized skills to be able to do. So I'm not sure if you saw that image, but there were like 6 tabs across the top, and we divided our maps up kind of by gross theme, if you will, because putting everything into one would have required at that time custom coding. It would have been really complicated. It would have been hard to figure out. And someone in Indiana or Oregon couldn't just look at it and say, oh, I know someone who can do that. We're good to go. So the idea was that it would be replicable. Um, it still is, although it seems the general level of knowledge in conservation groups is higher. So we don't really have to do that so much anymore. But I do like to keep things simple because I can get more work done rather than spend time on making things looking flashy and then having to fix it whenever they update something on the ArcGIS platform, which is about every 2 months.
Okay. Harking back to the question of how do you know where the tree farms are being formed and that kind of thing, or where they exist. Uh, One of the commenters here notes that ABRA works with groups like South Wings and other private pilots. And if it's useful that, and drones, people with drones,
Mhm.
so if it's useful, it's possible to maybe, search certain areas and look for things that you might not see on Google Earth or there, that can supplement those kinds of things. So that's
Mhm.
just, I don't know if you want to expand on that, but
Sure. Well, I've gotten out of the kind of the drone business, if you will, myself. Um, but there are lots of folks out there with drones.
yeah,
Um, and if you find someone who is so inclined to feel the same way that you do about this stuff, you can put one up and take photos of just about anything that you want to. Um,
as long as you follow the rules.
as long as you follow the rules. Now, if there's no transaction of any kind taking, place, I think you can probably still technically operate under the rules of a hobbyist.
Mm.
I would not take that as gospel because, as I said, I haven't even looked at the regs in about 3 years since I last flew my drone, and that may have changed.
Yeah,
But also, there are lots of folks out there with their commercial drone pilot's license, and many of them like to go film in the forests and like to go film in pretty places and don't like them being cut down and would probably be happy to spend half an hour with you to put their drone up and take a few pictures.
yeah,
I imagine there are a lot of people who really enjoy flying their actual airplanes over pretty places too, rather than clear cuts and burnt out stumps.
yeah,
So yeah, the general aviation community might be a place to look. As the commenter mentioned, South Wings is a group that exists basically to get people up in the air and provide that kind of perspective. I think in some cases, I don't think they will take photos for you, but if you can get someone of your group up there, you can certainly take whatever photos you want on the flight.
absolutely. Okay. Well, we're almost at time. I'll just throw in one more little note that somebody made here, and that is that ABRA has an advisory board that um, helps give expertise and um, I guess guidance to how your programs run. If you want to say anything else about that.
Sure, sure. We've recently gotten that back on track after the winter. We have an advisory board. I think altogether there are about 30 people on it from various conservation organizations around the region. Most people are either currently involved or, were. Many have scientific or regulatory backgrounds and, enjoy keeping up with this kind of stuff and want to make sure that rules are followed and places are protected that should be. So yeah, there are a number of people out there who are willing to help, and we tap them pretty frequently asking for help with stuff that we can't get done.
Yep.
If
Okay,
if I might say one more thing,
please.
I accidentally closed my window that had my little script in it about 4 slides, 5 slides before the endangered species and mining bit. So
Yeah.
I was kind of winging it. I wanted to touch back on the mention of doing the project to collect data about whether wildfires were a good idea or not. Um, I absolutely think that, sorry, not wildfires, prescribed burning and heavy logging in the guise of wildfire mitigation. I personally don't think that's a good idea. I know the Forest Service has done a lot of research out west, and I guess they have determined that in certain environments, it really does help. Um, yeah, I believe there has been some indication from local forests that they're interested in this project and finding out and that's going to be a multi-year effort. Um, I sort of misspoke, and I don't want to imply that the Forest Service here is hell bent on burning everything down and cutting everything down. They're not. Um, but as you may know, if you've been following these EOs and the legislation, they're being told to.
Right.
So well, we're hoping to work with them, not against them, on figuring out what's really going to work and what's not going to work so well. And yeah, that's all. I didn't mean to didn't mean to speak badly about folks who are doing a really hard job with very few resources. They're doing their
Yeah.
best.
Well, they're very commonly is a kind of a difference between the people who are on the political level and the people who took this on because they thought it was a good idea and that's what they care about. And that's probably most of the down in the structure of these agencies. So we don't badmouth those folks. What we do is we criticize the bad policies and the bad
Yes,
practice.
sir.
Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Dan. This is great. And I also just want to quickly recognize Kylie, my colleague, who makes sure that I don't screw up this whole thing and get the technology all messed up. Makes it work. So thank you all for being here and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.